My name is Alyssa Farron, and I'm the director, head curator.
Yeah.
And I'm the director and curator at Dunlop Art Gallery. So I'd like to welcome you, whether you're joining us here in person in the theater. We also have people who are joining us live online, and also welcome to you if you happen to be watching us later in the recorded video. So I'd like to do the land acknowledgement. I wish to acknowledge that we are here on Treaty 4, which is the land of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and the homeland of the Métis. It is my true pleasure to welcome here Cheryl L'Hirondelle and Judy McNaughton to realize this important work. Yeah, go ahead. So it's my true pleasure to welcome them here tonight to realize this ambitious and important work. Tonight we're here celebrating Cheryl L'Hirondelle's exhibition, Why the Caged Bird Sings, Immersive Engagements, which was co-curated by Judy McNaughton, as well as Thomas Johnson, who's not able to be here tonight. Although I know he's probably watching online. So I've only known Cheryl for not very long. We met very recently, I would say. But I think during that short time that I've gotten to know Cheryl, I would say that in many ways, she's shown me what it means to work from a love ethic. And so Bell Hooks, who's a writer that passed away a couple of years ago, she describes what it means to work with a love ethic as we utilize all dimensions of love in our work: care, commitment, trust, responsibility, respect, and knowledge. So these are all traits that I know is what it takes to be an exceptional artist. And during the short time that I've gotten to know Cheryl, I've seen that she's shown me these traits in really meaningful ways. So before we get into tonight's discussion, I have many thank yous. So I'd like to thank Commonweal Community Arts, the Australian Research Council's Discovery Project Scheme, Glam Collective, Regina Folk Festival, Nuit Blanche, Paved Arts, and in particular, David Riviere, Core Coffee. I'd also like to thank Dunlop Art Gallery's funders, Sask Arts, Canada Council for the Arts, Canadian Heritage, and Sask Culture. I'd also like to thank Candace Hopkins, Burke Jordan, Crystal Peterson, David Sellinger, Jolie Big Eagle, as well as the team here at Dunlop who's made this occasion possible. John Cody, Jesse Dishaw, Eric Hill, Wendy Peart, Sarah Pittman, Aisha Mosen, Margaret Basai, Tai Sang, and Shamim Agamina. And now I'm going to introduce our special guest. Cheryl L'Hirondelle, Cree, Halfbreed, German, and Polish, is a community-engaged interdisciplinary artist and singer and songwriter with ties to Edmonton, Papaschase First Nation, and Kikino Metis Settlement. As a songwriter, L'Hirondelle's focus is on sharing nêhiyawin, Indigenous song forms, and personal narrative storytelling or story writing as methodologies towards survivance. Cheryl is a recipient of the 2021 Governor General's Award in Visual and Media Arts and is currently completing an interdisciplinary practice-based PhD with Smart Lab UCD in Ireland. Judy McNaughton is a visual artist and cultural animator living in Prince Albert, Treaty 6. Throughout her career, she has been socially motivated, which manifests in cultural activism and socially engaged projects. With a lifelong dedication to Saskatchewan cultural life, she often integrates national artists into locally relevant interdisciplinary settings, bringing mentorship and enrichment into our cultural ecosystem while highlighting the strengths of beauty that already exist. So thank you to our guests who are joining us tonight. We're so grateful and so pleased to have you here. And without further ado, Judy and Cheryl.
Hello? You turn it on? Yeah. The Judy and Cheryl show. Thank you, Alyssa. So Judy, we've been at this a long time.
Yes, you and I.
Yeah, when did we start? When did we start?
2008.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gone through a lot of iterations, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what should we let people know about tonight? What do you think what do we want to get into?
I guess it's been a journey that we didn't know we were going on at the beginning.
Yeah.
It felt like, you were just another artist that was coming in to do another workshop, and there was sort of an intense magic that happened, I think, when you came into the facilities, and it was really clear that there was more to be done, and that the path needed to find its own way, and it did. And it came to here, and we would never have guessed that, I think, at the beginning.
No.
Yeah.
I think my memory was I was actually working down here with Commonweal on the Dudney Avenue project.
Oh, yeah.
And it just made sense to have me come up. And I remember you asked me if I would come up for 5 days and do singing with a group of women in Pine Grove.
Mm-hmm.
And I proposed something a little bit different. Mm-hmm. And you were wonderful. I have to say Commonweal's really amazing. If anyone hasn't worked with Commonweal, they're flexible, they get it, they're interested in innovation. So my recollection was that instead of me coming and just teaching some songs to some women for 5 days, I said, why don't we write a song and record it? Can your budget stretch that far? And you found, I think it was Big Drum Media, a small producer in Prince Albert, who was willing to come, and we did it. We wrote our first song, which was called "The Beauty Within."
Yeah.
And
it's not something we would ever ask someone to come into a facility and write a song. So, I mean, we didn't ask you to do that, but it was clearly part of your process. And it was startling that you were able to achieve that. Do you have anything else to say about that process, that methodology that you began with, and maybe that's developed?
Well, that'll explain why there's these 4 handsome men on the screen. These are 4 of my uncles. I come from a big musical family, and that was life growing up. For us, is that we from a really, really early age, we had an aunt. Her name was Aunt Celeste, and she had this beautiful, gorgeous, legendary voice. In fact, my mom cried years later and said, if what's happening for Native people in the music industry now would have been happening when Auntie Celeste was young, she would have been a star, So in our family, if Auntie Celeste was singing lead, you had to find a harmony or a rhythm or an instrument. And so we had these huge family jams. And if you didn't do that, you had to jig. So you had to learn how to dance. So, you can imagine these houses just probably shaking and rattling with all of the music that was going on. But I was taught from a really early age, and I think a lot of Native people are taught this, that when you have a gift, you have to share it, right? You have to, it has to be for others, the benefit of others. And so that was really what I wanted to do. Was I thought, well, I know how to write a song, and I know how important that was for me the moment I wrote a song that had a beginning, a middle, and end, had a chorus, had a verse, return to the root at the end of the song. If you're a musician, it was phenomenal. And I knew that would be, it had so much meaning for me that if I could share even a little bit of that with somebody else, I wanted them to have that feeling of, it's a song, it's a real song, So that was really the beginning of what I wanted to come and do. And at Pine Grove, we that very first time, we just used my drum and found a melody that worked for us, and Yeah.
And so we had you come in to Pine Grove Correctional Center in Prince Albert. It's a facility for women. And I remember at one point you invited me in to just listen to them sing the song that they had written over the past week. We're talking. And I remember I walked in, there was a group of women all in a circle, and they were all sort of slouched down and, you know, looking pretty tired and weary. And so Cheryl said, okay, we're going to sing. And they all sat up and, you know, suddenly had an entirely different demeanor, took a deep breath, and then sang powerfully. It was like an entirely different group of people. And I remember asking you, like, how you were able to teach so much in so little time, like actually transform them into singers. And you said that you didn't think it was something that you taught, that it was something that had been modeled, that they picked up and modeled after you. And it seemed to me at that time, and reflecting on it later, that there was something being conveyed during that workshop that went beyond just songwriting and singing. It seemed like they had modeled something from you that brought kind of a learning that was more than what we had asked you to do, come in and do the songs. Can you speak a little bit about that, about these aspects of your workshop?
Sure, I think the modeling is something that we all do. I mean, we're all in this room, we're a community of people, we're experiencing each other, we're always modeling, we're always going, oh, that's a good idea. I mean, I'm neurodiverse, so I'm always kind of taking ideas from people going, that's a good way to be in public. Oh, okay, that works. So, but I think what I noticed with the women was I would ask them, actually, I asked them all, I said, because at first they were all very quiet. And I was like, and it was like, well, you can't sing if you're slouched in a chair. That's one thing. Your diaphragm's cut off. And so we would play around a little bit with that, and then finally got them to realize that, yeah, actually you can project better. It makes more sense when you're sitting up. And then the other thing was I'd ask them to use their mother voice. And they all used their sweet, loving mother voice. And I was like, not your sweet, loving mother voice. The voice when you're yelling at your kids and telling them to get in here. That's the voice, that's the power you need. So it was interesting. And we, a lot of teasing and a lot of cajoling and stuff like that. I'm just going to pass. I just should say my uncle's names. John with the fiddle, James with the banjo, Uncle Gorgie with no instrument in his hand, and Uncle Arthur, just so I can name my uncles. I'll just change to this image. This is the late Margaret Siwa. And I think what we realized over the week was probably the greatest modeling that the women had in their lives was actually their literacy therapist. And so because I got along with the literacy therapist, and her name is Carla Johnson, and some of you may know Carla Johnson, they realized that, oh, Carla, they like each other, they're on good terms, so we can trust her too. She seems okay. Because for a lot of the women who go in, and men as well, we'll say some of the men's names as well, a lot of the women, the literacy class in programs area, that's like a home room. So if you ever remember your grade 3 teacher or your grade 4 teacher, whatever your favorite teacher was when you were a kid, that's like, you trust that teacher, you love that teacher. They're always going to be there looking out for you. And that's what it was like for the women, that they loved Carla. And Carla gave them tough love, but they loved her because they learned stuff from her, and she was always like supporting and uplifting them, So that's why it was a beautiful environment for me to go in and to kind of be a trusted friend of Carla's, so that I could go in and be another person who would model them. And we riffed off of what Carla was working with a lot of the women on. And it was basic literacy. And I don't know how familiar anyone in here is with corrections. So maybe just it'll be handy to have a little bit of a primer. Is there, useful? So in corrections, as soon as somebody gets sentenced, they get assessed. And they get assessed in 4 areas. They get assessed to find out if they have low literacy and they need to help with their literacy. They get assessed to find out if they have skills that or a lack of skills. And then there's some opportunities. Those are that's a whole other conversation. They're leaving, but at any rate, and then they get assessed on cognitive behavioral issues, and there's modules and work that they can do for that. And then also then addictions. And if addictions is the issues, then of course there's different treatments. And so that's the area I always went in, was in the program area. And, it became relevant and useful. So for instance, with the very first song, The Beauty Within, Carla had the women writing kind of positive affirmations in a journal. And we just started working with that. Let's use that as the base of the kind of song you're going to write. And it ended up becoming part of the project. The project was quite generative, where actually all of the co-writers would give me good ideas of stuff, and I go, that's a really good idea, let's do that. And so later on, in later songs, I would say to participants, the very first thing I would say to them after I introduced myself, is I'd say, you know that joke? They'd go, what joke? Maybe you should say that, what joke? And then I'd say, what that country song joke, what do you get when you play a country song backwards? Does anyone know the answer? David, you know the answer?
You told me.
Okay. So what you get if you play a country song backwards is you get your dog and your house and your wife and your car, right? So that became sort of the basis of the project. We could write a hurting song, but instead of writing a hurting song, why don't we write a kind of a freedom song, a powerful song, a song of who we are, a song of what we want to be. So it really came from the women. And so we were modeling each other probably in the end all round, Sorry, I come from a family that makes a short story long, so sorry about that.
It's all good.
That's gonna go on.
Yeah, and so at some point, you did several of these workshops in corrections, and there came a point when it was clear that something was happening inside the facilities that was really difficult to describe to people outside. And we had talked about finding some way to make that visible to people who weren't familiar with facilities like this or what could happen. And so I asked you to consider how your work in corrections facilities might be shared with a wider public. And particularly for the exhibition at the Man Art Gallery, how we could make a space where the local communities who normally wouldn't come into the gallery, it just wasn't someplace that they would go or that they would feel natural in, make them feel comfortable to enter and experience what was happening inside. And this, I think, was the point where things moved from being songwriting inside the facilities and recording the songs. So those songs were going out into working together towards a full exhibition.
It actually though started before you asked me, right. And I told you that I had already been working with a couple curators,
right? Because
it did get out into the community, into the arts community. You know what it's like with curators. They're like, what are you working on? And, and I would be like, I'm working on writing some songs inside corrections or on the inside. And it was Steve Loft who actually challenged me and sort of said, well, you're a media artist. You're a new media artist. Are you making work that sort of deals with the subject matter, deals with the song, deals with something thematic about the work? And so that was, I made the first piece, which is upstairs, and it's called Here I Am. And I made that for an exhibition called Ghost Dance, and that was in 2013. And then I made a piece for, same thing happened, more curators, what are you working on? And I was just finishing my master's, and this project became my master's. So Why the Cage Bird Sings became the basis of my master's in inclusive design. And I made a piece for Jamie Isaac and Leah Decter for a show at the Gallery of Southwestern Manitoba, and that was the song that's the piece which is upstairs as well, and it's called Winter Count, and the song is called Can't Break Us. And I also made a video version of that same song, and actually it was for Moving Forward, Never Forgetting, that David Garneau, yourself, and Michelle LaValle curated at the Mackenzie. So I already had some kind of things to say, well, I've been working on this is great, let's make it a full exhibition. And that's when we started talking about exciting stuff like VR and sensor-driven, projection mapping. And I was very excited when you asked me, because I was so good. And I think the thing I really liked too, when you asked me, was that it was the way you were describing the Mann Gallery at the Ralston Center.
At the E.A. Ralston Center, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you want to talk about the Ralston a little bit?
Yeah, I think at that time, in Prince Albert, there was a new performance arts center that opened up, and there was a lot of energy in the community, a lot of funding went toward it, and I think there was a feeling that it was only going to be for a certain portion of the people in the community, and there was a strong push to make it accessible and open and available to everybody in the community. And it went beyond sort of making it accessible, but for some of us, it was to somehow make it within people's mindsets that it was a place where they were going to be welcome. And so that was the challenge that I think we set for ourselves, was how do we bring people into this facility who have never been in an art gallery before? How do we make what's happening inside go outside so that people feel like there's an avenue in?
Yeah,
does that sound right?
That sounds right. And so here's, this is just a version of Here I Am, which is upstairs. And then this is also the first version of Winter Count, the installation part of it. And I'll just show this image. And this is what you're saying about getting people into an art gallery, who Native people who might not normally go. This, everyone in the audience knows that the RPL and the Dunlop is like, pretty freaking legendary as it goes, because of every morning that I have been here, there's been people waiting at the door, community members waiting at the door to come in, and you don't find that at every library in town, in any town. And so the fact that the Dunlop is also here and the kind of traffic you get, it's pretty legendary. But this piece that I'm just showing, it was a piece I did in, I can't remember what year. It was called nîhiyawin ohci, and I did it on reserve at wâskahikan up in northern Saskatchewan. And what I did was I did a half marathon. I ran 12 and a half kilometers across, or I think that's a half marathon, across the reserve, like around the reserve. And it was a performance art piece. And I had other people like going door to door talking about me, this woman who was running, and you need to drink every few minutes. And so there's this old way of being that if you, I asked like a long time ago, if somebody comes to your door and they're a stranger, you would feed them and give them something to drink. And so I had different people like Louise Half and Joseph Nîtawhau and Shelley Night Traveler knocking on people's doors and saying, there's a woman running for your ancestor. Will you honor the old way, and would you give her something to drink if she knocks on your door? And if they said yes, they wrote in chalk. You can just see it behind that young man's head. That's the syllabics for nipi, which is water. And I would know that that was a place I could stop and get a drink of water. And they knew that oh, she's running for our ancestors. So it was so I think that kind of followed then when you were talking to me about the doing the work at the Man. I kind of went, yeah, I'm into it. Let's do it. Let's try and figure out a way that we can make work that is for community, you know. But then the pandemic hit,
yeah,
and that changed everything.
Yeah,
but kind of in a good way,
mm-hmm.
because we did some really cool things. Do you want to talk about some of the cool things we did for the Man Show?
Yeah, we can talk about that together.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
So in a way, the pandemic hit, and it was kind of another outlet for us to have to put things from the inside to the outside, and it was kind of an excuse also for us. Oh yeah, we just gotta we gotta use all our funding money to make things onto the windows. So we put up
vinyl
shower curtains all over because the building has very tall windows, and we put these curtains up that we could project onto so that some of the songs and videos and imagery that was happening on the inside was actually being projected onto the outside, and people would walk down from the mall down to the river and back up to the mall through the day, and they would stop and they'd be kind of looking in, and so we're like, okay, we're going to put a projection right here where people will see it. And so a lot of people didn't really have to come in to see what was happening on the inside. That would happen, you know, also on the outside. And for the opening
was awesome. We, you know, because we couldn't even gather in a room like this, we had a parking lot karaoke party, and it was wonderful. Like, we had a VJ, we had the songs being played. Joseph Nêhiyawin sang them. Harvey Knight was his DJ, and we gave prizes out to people in the audience who sang along and who we thought did good renditions of the songs. I danced with a lot of people that night in the parking lot. We had a really fun time. It was lovely. That was the opening. We got to hang out with community, and there was a lot of community who came because, you know, it's a big PA system, and they all showed up, and so we fed people. We went car to car. If people wanted to stay in their car, we had little bags of popcorn and pepperoni and twisters and juice and pop, and so I thought it was like a huge success.
Yeah. And then at the end, the VJ and DJ put on a big display, and there was songs, and I think they picked a lot of the songs that had to do with freedom and incarceration and those kind of themes.
And then we also did, because in the show upstairs that you'll go and see hopefully, and partake in, there's 2 VR pieces in the show upstairs. But because we couldn't do that during the pandemic, there's just no way we could have, you know, it would have been almost illegal, I guess. We had Google Cardboard, or knockoff Google Cardboard, that I found from China, I think 35 cents a piece, and we had to fold them all together and put them all together. But we gave them away to absolutely every person who came into the gallery who had a smartphone and wanted to, you know, be able to see the VR and go home with a Google Cardboard. So
the kids loved it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Like a free VR headset.
So we did some really good workarounds. I think it worked for the Man. It was really interesting. So, but I'm excited about being here because, you know, you guys rock, I have to say.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive here. Yeah.
And so we wanted also to talk a little bit about the work itself here.
Okay.
And if you're ready to go on to talk about that. So we were making some observations about the work, that it's very multi-sensory. It's like an experience, and it will include the sound of the songs, smells of the hides. There's even tactile aspects. It's interactive. People can like lay on the artwork, and this is all pretty unusual for an art gallery experience. And I was wondering if you just wanted to like share some of your insights on this way of working, this part of your practice.
Yeah, I think I don't know, you know, whoever's online, hello, and whoever's in this room, hello. I don't know. I think we all kind of have varying degrees of like synesthesia. You know, I don't think we I don't think we can isolate our senses, that we're just hearing. We're always hearing and seeing, hearing and seeing and smelling, hearing and seeing and smelling and sensing and feeling. So I really wanted to kind of have the show kind of have this full experience, that you're experiencing with all of your senses. And I know it's a nice follow-up from Judy Anderson's show, which had a real good smellorama for it. And this one will knock your socks off as well. But the other thing too is that because of my own kind of neurodiversity, I've never been able to, I've had to really like keep my hands in my pockets when I walk into a gallery, because I literally, like if I see a really good painting, I want to lick it. Because, when you see somebody who knows what to do with their paint, like I just start drooling because it looks so good, I want to lick it. So I think that and I've done things in galleries where I've gotten in trouble, where people like guards have come up to me and said, get off of that. And I'm going, well, there wasn't any bar around it saying I couldn't get onto it. So I've been told off lots of times in galleries. And I kind of thought, well, I want to make work that people have to touch. I want to make work where you have to like lay on it or sit on it. I want to make work where you, and I think probably I'll just go back to this slide. It relates back to early net artwork that I made. This piece, which was called Treaty Card, the reason that Facebook and all of the social media is what it is it's database driven. It's creating a database, and it's called a dynamic database, meaning you're always adding to it and making the database bigger. That's how it all works. That's how social media works. And this piece was dynamic in that you could add a photo, you could add your name, and you would be basically joining a band roll, and then you could print out what you had added and fold it and put it in a little plastic envelope, and it was called Treaty Card, because that's the misnomer on the Great Northern Plains here, is that the status Indian card is called the Treaty Card. And the premise of the project is that it makes no sense that just Native people have a treaty card, because the treaties were signed between two parties. So everyone has a role and a responsibility in that treaty, and everyone should be honoring that treaty and have the card. So that project, the reason these two images are up was I started realizing that it was going to galleries, and it was showing in a lot of galleries, but there was like older gentlemen who probably, were non-status treaty Indians, like we are in our family, and they always felt like jilted because they didn't have their own treaty card, and they found the website and they made their own treaty card. And I used to sit in the evenings and just cry, because it was so beautiful to see that folks were using the project. So yeah, with the work upstairs, is one of the pieces is definitely generative. Like it's not the work until everyone contributes to it. It makes it that much more so. So that was really important. And then I think the other thing I think is important to say about around the whole sort of sensoriness of the whole show, and especially the VR, is that when we paint people with a quick brush and sort of say all Native people are this, all people who have been incarcerated are this, all people who are of a certain income are this, all people who are urban are this, we're not really understanding the full dynamic, right? And so I kind of wanted to, that was my challenge, was can I make work where you can get inside it and maybe hear the song, because it's all, the four pieces are based in the songs. Can you kind of change your point of view? Can you get inside it a little bit? And can you can you find some empathy? Because something in you resonates, Does it remind you of something from your youth? Like what? Is there some way empathy can be generated? So I think that's something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's nice to experience an exhibition with your entire body. And so I have one more thought. And
Yeah.
this is something that I was sort of questioning you about.
Oh, yeah.
And you said I could ask it here.
Okay, all right.
So there's something that struck me about this exhibition when I was looking at it, and for me, the exhibition invokes the natural world and its imagery and materials, and it also uses medias that aren't usually associated with our experiences in the natural world, such as the virtual reality headsets. And so I was just wondering if you could tell us about these different approaches that you use together in your practice.
Yeah, I think that if you were incarcerated, and I think that's an impossible place for anyone to imagine, right? It's really hard to imagine, like, all of a sudden all of your rights are taken away from you and your lifestyle is absolutely changed. So in the same way, I think it was kind of interesting to think about VR, which is very often very highly constructed, it's avatars and, imaginary realities and imaginary worlds. And I kind of wanted to play with that. I wanted to kind of have a bit of the real inside the VR. And part of it is, I'll show, is this going to work? Is that it? Is that my last image? I'll show this. Oh, so this is kind of also another impossible place. When do you ever get to be underneath a drum that's being played? Like, only if you were maybe a small child might you have that memory. If you came from a very specific family, might you have that memory? But if you don't, what would it like to be able to get to experience that? Is that something that, might make you experience, this is reality. This is not virtual. It's only virtual because you're in the visor, but it's actual drummers drumming. And then here, this one, I was thinking about, this is kind of another impossible place, but it's based on a childhood memory when I was a kid, and how many of us held on to our mom's skirts when we were little and when we walked around in public. So there's something about this kind of safe place. I wanted to create this real safe refuge place, And then the other thing about the virtual reality piece, which is sort of really just, it's nature. It's quite beautiful. It's up in around Buffalo Narrows and La Plonge First Nation. Most of it was shot. I'd asked the guys who co-wrote the song To All Our Nations, I asked them just casually, I said, if I ever make a music video out of this song, what would you want in the music video? And they said, we'd want it to be about the Northern Bush. And it really made me realize that, here you are in this VR and you're experiencing their lifestyle. You're experiencing what they cherish and what they look at. And it's not the subject matter of most music videos. There's no country road, and there is a couple, but there's no pickup truck that has two levers in it that drive away, which is, most country songs. And, and fast edits, that's the nature of most music videos. So there's no fast edits. And it was just a way to kind of create some nice long shots where you really get to observe. And I shot it on a weekend when there was no bugs. And I shot it 10 days before all the forest fires started this spring. So I caught it at this amazing time when it was spring, no bugs, and it just looking really verdant and beautiful. Yeah. So I think there's something nice to kind of play with technology and not always have to make it single shooter, let's kill people and have scary monsters come out and things like that.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So that was my question.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if there's anybody who has any other questions for Cheryl about her practice and her methodologies, her work,
or what you're going to see upstairs. Or if you don't, I've got 1,001 thank yous, because there's there's 100 people who wrote these songs. There's 100 amazing beings who helped write these songs, who co-wrote all the lyrics. So, questions?
Did you have a working relationship with those institutions prior to that project, or what process did you go through to reach out to them or propose the idea and establish a relationship with them?
That's a really good question. So we'll just repeat the question. Working relationship with the institution, how we either had that relationship or reached out to them. So that's a you question.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So Commonweal did have a relationship with the Pine Grove Correctional Center for Women. I think they had just started, I think Maria Campbell had done a project in there. So I think we just swooped in on that relationship that had existed. And what happened, I think, was it wasn't easy. It is not easy to build trust with a correctional facility. It takes years. So it was a slow progression to the point where we could actually do recording and bring in, and at one point we were bringing in like microphones and sound band, which we would never have been able to do at the beginning. But we built that relationship. And then what happened was word got out amongst the correctional facilities in Prince Albert from one facility to the next. And also staff moves a lot from facility to facility. So we would go into the next place, which was the Correctional Center for Men.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was one of the managers that had grilled me in the Women's Correctional Center and then was convinced just opened the door and said, yeah, you give these people anything they want. And she was in a position where she had the power to just change everything for us. All the doors open. We had everything that we needed, staff. And so I think it's just a slow building of that reputation and those relationships. And then you can go on from there.
I went into a few as well. And it really is this thing of, it did get through kind of the prison network that there was this woman who wrote songs and she seemed to be fine. She seemed to know how to follow all the rules. And so, you know, I started being able to like make more connections much easier. So for the moving forward, never forgetting, it was, I think, Janine Windolf. Her dad, I think, has a connection to Paul Dojak youth detention. And then I happened to, through the same sort of, there's this woman doing this thing, got a connection into ohci Healing Lodge, which is down at Maple Creek, which is a federal women's penitentiary. And yeah, I think that's it. And then I started getting connections. I've got connections in Ontario now as well, with some of the men's federal maximum penitentiary. So it is, you know, and really the key thing is that you're building trust with the staff and with the warden. And the key thing, if anyone is interested in working in corrections, is just get really good at asking what the rules are for that particular facility and then memorizing those rules and living by those rules. And it's only for that facility, but you do what they say and they'll love you and you'll have a good time. Yeah, thanks for that question. That was a good question.
That's a good question.
Another question? You got your hand up? Who's got their hand up? Yeah, I think there's a microphone. Hold on. I'll bring you a microphone. Yeah, that's all right. We won't make you sing like Celine Dion. Not yet, anyway.
My name is Carol. I like your painting
Thank you.
of your feet.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah. In fact, the ones in the middle are my feet.
Yeah, and your feet too. You look different.
I have big feet. I have really
Yes.
big feet.
Yeah.
Thank you. My mom used to say, big feet, better understanding. That's what she used to say to me.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Is there any questions online? Eric's got a question online, it looks like. Eric's holding his finger up. He's saying there's something online. Better not be too tough. Not the time of day for tough questions.
You have such a facility in working across media and languages. Can you speak a bit about your knowledge of Cree and the ways that this knowledge has shaped your practice and collaborations?
And almost all who asked that question. Cree language does play into this project, even though most of the songs are written in English. There's a little bit of Cree lyrics and a little bit of Dene lyrics. You know, the MO or the modus operandi of Cree is miopamatuwin. I think it's the same for Soto. You know, it'd be like maybe mino pimaresuwin, which means good life, right? So that's one of the things when I said the challenge at the very beginning of the songwriting workshops was, let's not write a hurting song. Let's write a song which is a song about life, you know? And then the other thing too is I was asked the other day, I'm looking right at you. I was asked the other day about when I write a song, one of my songs, I go out and listen to nature. And I go out and listen to Mother Earth, and I listen to all of the rhythms and the shapes that I'm hearing from the natural environment to write songs. But with these songs, I listen to the cadence and the rhythm of the participants, of the co-writers' lyrics. And so that was really what guided the melodies, was the natural sort of cadence of the words that they were writing and the words that they were sharing. Which I think is the same thing. You know, I think when we're listening to each other on a really deep level, we're still listening to that connection to the land. So I'm not sure if that answers that question well enough, but it's late in the day, so that's probably as good as I can do. The other thing too I should say is, you know, there is this notion of metaphor within Cree language, and it is something that also was part of the methodology, you know, like we would look for a metaphor for the song. So for instance, you know, this screenshot from the VR, which is upstairs, the beauty within, you know, what is the metaphor? The metaphor is that the women are the beauty within, you know, because they're inside, but they also have a beauty within them, you know? So there's a metaphor that's at play there. So that's also, you know, the Cree language sort of came into play for all of the songs with the use of metaphor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think we have time for maybe a couple more questions, if there's anything burning.
Or I got a big long list of thank yous.
Yes, you've got your thank yous. Maybe we should move on to the thank you.
Yeah, you want to hear some? You want to hear the names of the participants? You want me to say their names? I also wanted to say the cultural coordinator at Paul Dojak, who's now retired. His name is Elroy Carrier, and I think it's important to say his name along with Carla's, because you know when you talk about love, you know, and this is one of the things we don't think about when we're thinking about the staff who work within corrections. Many of them are lifers because they're going to do that job for their whole life until they retire. And that's a lifer, you know, and if they're not doing it to be a-holes, you know, they love the people they get to work with. They develop relationships, you know, and not every, you know, my mom used to say you can't be friends with everyone, you know, but, you know, that's the thing I experienced by and large, was that there was a lot of care, and especially in the program staff area, there was a lot of care. So I'm just going to rattle through the names because you did a really good, Alyssa, you did a great thing by thanking all the funders and everything. But I just want to say the names of all of the co-writers. And then upstairs, there's also the names of all of the film, all of my crews, all of my editors, all of my color correctionists, all of my animators. You'll see them on the didactic upstairs. But I just want to say the names of the songwriters. So for The Beauty Within, Tracy Gamble, Margaret Siwap, Shalene Holcomb, Michelle Baldy Marsh, Karen Muchawinis, Angela Rabbitskin, Lisa Smith, and Carla Johnson. For Here I Am, Kathy McAlinden, Christine Griffiths, Heike Irmgard Hagen, Beverly Fullerton, R.M. Gorman, Lorianne Maurice, Kristen Dillon, Kay Brunette, Tiffany Peters, E. Jackman, and I give them these options on how they want their name to be said. Panda Bear Delorme, V. Martin, Ann Chartrand, Cindy Sinclair, and Sherry Wright. For Can't Break Us, these kids were underage at the time. They're not anymore, but we used aliases. Bannock Kid, Cruz, AWCP, Redman, I Walk Alone, Ryder, Lil Dirk, Kilo G, Biter, Lil Bear, and of course, Elroy Carrier again. To All Our Nations, Trevor Alexander, Trevor S. Ballantyne, John Craig, Jaden Priest, George Laughlin, Donovan Mispanass, Fabian Stelphany, Terrence Stonechild, Jake Toussaint, Robert Young, Alfred Sanderson. Oh, I'm going to just keep going. Do you want to do a few?
No, you keep going.
Oh, okay, I'm doing them all. All right. And I'm just going to take a second in the midst of telling you their names and just let you know that I have a music publishing company that's dedicated to these songs and other songs. They all get paid. They all, there's money in a bank for them for residuals. This show, for instance, the songs are all licensed, so they'll all be making money for having work in the show. The artists who do the artwork, they get money. Everyone gets paid. No one's doing this for free. Just a lot of itinerant human beings that are tough to track down. But the money's there. The money's in the bank. The Journey Home, Jane Paul, Janine George, Doris Banahoney, Charlie Thiggelstadt, Stacy Gunlogson, Margaret Sewap, Danielle Ermine, Carla Johnson, a couple more. Hang on. They're important. These are amazing beings. Oh my gosh. Live the life that is meant for me. Drew Ballantyne, Mitchell Ballantyne, Larry Bird, Corey Halkett, Joshua Johnson, Randall Ameg, Keith William Martell, Robert Patchapiece Fable, Alfred Sanderson, The Journey to Freedom, Kendall Whitstone, Jessica Smith, Farron Longman, Alexis Arcand, Janelle Umferville, Janelle Montgrand, Carla Johnson, Margaret, or Come My Sisters Come, Maureen Montgrand, Elizabeth Charles, Bernice Sanderson, Deanna Renee Desjardins, Melody Bird, Angela Rabbitskin, M. Henderson, Carla Robinson, and Lightning Scarred Heart, Jennifer Houle, Abby Nawakayas, Celeste Whitehawk, Bernice Big Head, Rosanna Napope, Cheyenne Fox, Jessica LaPlante, Sandy, and Carla Johnson. And I also had amazing music producers and other musicians that supported the project. So, thank you all so very much. This is a labor of love. You're right. I love these people and I love these songs and I love you all for coming up tonight. Thank you. And I love you.
Yes.
Thank you for sticking with this project for all these years.
My
It's so
pleasure.
amazing. Okay. Thank you.